What is up, YouTube? So today I got a good one. How to overcome the fear of death. Okay, this is something that's probably crossed every human being in the world at some point or another. Unfortunately, it's a fear that isn't as necessary as we think it is, and it can really affect our lives. It can really drive us in the wrong direction, and it can actually be quite crippling. I suffered from health anxiety, and I still, from time to time, have some issues with it. A lot of my videos on my channel are about that. I have a lot of subscribers that go through the same thing that I go through, and it's just this crazy fear of having a health issue which can lead to death. Actually, in this video, I'm going to start out by telling you my story on that. I'm going to tell you my story that actually starts when I was 12 years old, which even my subscribers don't know because I haven't mentioned that in any video of when my fear of death arose for the first time and showed its ugly face. And then at the end of this video, stick around, okay, guys? This is going to be a good one. I'm going to let you know some ways to overcome this fear, okay? And maybe to put your mind at ease and peace and to start living a better and healthier life, okay? So let's get right into it. Whenever I was 12, there was an evening where I was laying in bed. It was time to go to sleep, and I don't know what was so different about that night, but just I was thinking about heaven, okay? And I'm a religious person, but heaven was coming through my mind, and I was analyzing and tearing it apart. I was like, what if I don't like heaven, I heard that we're not going to breathe. We're not going to have our physical bodies, We're going to just have just our souls there. What is it like not to breathe and be conscious? And, all these crazy thoughts bombarding me. I'm just dissecting everything I could dissect. I was like, oh, my God, my parents are going to die before me. I'm a kid. I'm thinking about my parents dying, but they're still alive today, and I'm a man. So it was like I was thinking they were going to die the next day or something, and this is where it originated. This is where it started. That fire started going. So I was just like, I was scared of them dying, and then I was just like, oh my God, I'm gonna die one day. My heart's gonna stop beating in my chest, and I'm gonna run out of oxygen, and my brain's gonna cut off, and I'm gonna die. I'm gonna pass over to this afterlife. Now, first off, if you're not religious, this video is still for you. You're going to find a lot of value out of this. I'm not going to go on a religious rant. If anybody questions, my faith or anything or what I believe in, join the Facebook group down below, and I would love to share my faith with you, and we'll get into that. But I kept, obsessing over this thought, and it started to scare me. And I don't think probably hadn't lived long enough to actually have a crazy panic attack. To have some full-blown anxiety attack like my first one whenever I was, I think, 21 or 22 years old. That's when I had my first anxiety attack and thought I was dying. I didn't do that, but I just went into this deep depression. I was like imagining what my obituary was going to look like. I was like, am I going to be 40? Am I going to be 60? Am I going to be 100? Am I going to die in 5 years? I was scared to death about how I was going to die. Was I going to die by a car wreck? That seems brutal. Am I going to die by cancer? A heart attack, a tumor in my brain, what was going to happen, or was I going to pass away in my sleep, which sounds great, but then I don't get to tell anybody goodbye. I went over every imaginable way of dying that there was, and it completely freaked me out. And as a 12-year-old, that is not normal. Okay, so that was kind of a foreshadowing of my health anxiety, if that makes any sense. And I remember for about this is crazy. This happened in the summer before my 7th grade year at junior high, and this lasted for about 2 months, almost the whole summer. And I forgot about it, and it went away probably about a week into school. Okay, whenever things were getting started at school, it was junior high, electives, and all kinds of different extracurricular activities that I did, and it got my mind off of it, so it helped there. But that whole summer was brutal. I remember being sick to my stomach. I remember being depressed, which you should not be if you're that age, okay? You should be having fun, not having a care in the world. That's the beauty of being a child. The innocence there is amazing, and that's something that I miss to this day. But every single day I was just completely depressed. I remember talking to my parents about it, and there wasn't much sympathy there. It was like, oh my gosh, Trey, I cannot believe you. You don't even be thinking about that. It was just horrible. I didn't get any of the answers that I wanted. I was terrified. I remember just taking walks outside in the backyard, back and forth pacing. And actually, it was just this obsessive thought just going through my mind of my goodness, my life is going to come to an end, and I'm terrified, and I'm just now realizing this. And I feel like that's something you shouldn't really think about, at least until you're like maybe in high school and maybe people close to you start dying. It's different for everybody. Some people are going to experience death at a younger age, and it's going to scare the heck out of them. And it's going to make them come to a realization that things don't go on forever. But others, it's going to take, being an adult. And I lost friends throughout high school after this happened. And it didn't strike some crazy fear in me. I wasn't totally, fearful. I was like, I'm a healthy guy. I have good habits, and I'm all right. You kind of start to get into that mode of, you feel like nothing's gonna happen to you. I even got in a few wrecks. Came close to death one time. But I was actually uninjured. I know that sounds weird, but my vehicle flipped over 3 times, and I peed all over myself, and I somehow came out unharmed from pressing my butt down and pressing my back against the seat before I rolled the truck. But even after that, I wasn't terrified of dying. So just something to think about there. What happened was I just had this crazy panic attack. Whenever I was 21, I had been drinking for 2 days straight, had an alcohol issue, and I just had this crazy panic attack. Every symptom in the world, thought I was dying of a heart attack, and that's when my health anxiety started. So then the fear of dying and the fear of having every disease in the book came about. Okay, so it was just this nightmarish thing. I like I said, my blood pressure was through the roof. I had chest pain. I was convinced I was dying, and then I struck a fear right here in the subconscious. Okay, struck a fear right there, shot right up to the top of my subconscious. That was my new number one objective, was to obsess about not dying, obsess about what disease I had. It was just driven by fear, and fear is actually number one thing that can have an effect on our subconscious, unfortunately. So I started to look up I thought I had cancer. I thought I had everything under the freaking moon. Everything. I went through this for 3 months. Every symptom. I had IBS. I had heartburn. I was having 10 panic attacks a day. And, it's unbelievable. I didn't think about it at the time, but this all started when I was 12 years old. When I was 12 years old and that first started, that was a sign that nobody had picked up on. I hadn't picked up on that whenever I got older, that I was going to deal with this intense fear of death and, fear of dying. Okay? So after this all happened, it was in the middle of my health anxiety, this crazy situation, and I started looking up what death was like. And this is whenever things started to change for me, and they started to help. Okay, many people don't want to look that up, but I looked it up, and from all the studies that I have looked at, and from interviews and blogs and vlogs, there's this sense of peace. That all the near-death experiences that I've ever read about, I rarely ever hear any of them being horrible and dreadful and scary. All of them are like it's an easy slip into the next, thing that's ready for us, our next life, or into whatever you want to believe. It was easy. The transition, there wasn't any pain. It was like a movie of different things going through your life, flashing before your eyes, kind of like a conclusion and going out with a bang kind of deal. And that was one of some of the things that started to bring me a little bit of peace. I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, I did not expect this. I expected like horrible pain, and yeah, there can be pain with certain death, but whenever it gets down to it, I'm not necessarily afraid of the actual pain. I think I go through pain as a human living right now. I've been through some of the worst pains ever, and that's not what I'm terrified of, because that just kind of happens when it happens. I don't have time to think about it. But the actual dying part was what I was scared about. That was what I feared. And the funny thing is that seems like to be the most peaceful part. And I started to, look into that more. And the more and more I read, the more that I saw that, it was an easy transition. And that gave me a tremendous amount of peace. That it was more, they said it felt natural. It felt like they were just slipping away into an abyss. And it was just, there was even a few records of people that were upset that they had come back. That they had actually come back to life. They said they were so peaceful that they were fine with being where they were. So that gave me some peace right there. Also, there were some studies that suggest as people get closer to death, there is more peace. Now, there are some people that might want to say they're putting on a brave face, which I feel like I would put on a brave face if I was dying. But I think I would embrace that, I thought I was dying every day with health anxiety. So with that being said, I feel like if I was to be diagnosed with something today, it wouldn't be as terrifying to me as it would be for somebody who has never feared death. So I think in a way I've kind of prepared myself for that, ironically. So if that makes any sense, I know what it's like to think you're dying every single day. So I've always thought, if I was diagnosed with cancer tomorrow, I would probably not be as scared as somebody that doesn't even suffer from health anxiety. And this is kind of what I want to get into. We have nothing to fear but fear itself. And I don't think about that statement too often. I've heard it a million times. And, it goes through my mind from time to time. But it really makes sense with this. You need to fear fearing death, because that's the worst. I went through that forever, okay? Stop fearing death. You are going to waste your time, okay? You're going to be so unproductive. It's crippling. It affects your health in general. When you worry about this stuff, it's making your health bad. And it's just going to lead to stress and anxiety, and possibly health anxiety if you already don't have that. So guys, think about all the negatives of fearing death. They overdo the positive. You can't change anything. All you can change is your health, exercise, well-being, eliminating stress. There are things you can do that you can control. But in the end, it's going to happen to all of us, and accepting that will actually help you get over this. Realizing that with death there's peace, and the funny thing is, in Western culture, in the United States and United Kingdom and stuff, we're the two nations that discuss death the least, and we're the nations that don't want to talk about it, and we sweep it under the rug, while Eastern culture, they talk about it all the time. It's such a big part, because without death there isn't life. Without life there isn't death. So it goes hand in hand. It's natural. It's part of this world. It's part of this great cycle that we're in. And again, if you're not religious, I want you to take something out of this. I'm at peace because of my religion, but also knowing that if I wasn't religious, I would still be at peace. Okay? If I wasn't religious at all and I didn't believe in anything that I believe in, I would still be at peace now. And that's inevitably, this is what helped me with my health anxiety and helped me overcome it, because I started accepting that, death wasn't as horrid. It was more horrid to lose somebody than for me to die. I didn't want to go in my life without somebody, more so than I cared about me dying. I accepted that it's going to happen whenever it happens. I'm going to fight whatever I got to fight. I'm going to go out with a bang, but I'm also going to live this life. I'm going to live every day like it's my last. And that's a cliche. You hear it a lot, but that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to attack life. I'm going to go out there and get what I want. I'm going to love my wife. I'm going to love my kids. I'm going to love my family. I'm going to do what I got to do, to have fun and have a good time and get the most out of my experience in this life that I have. So I want you to do that every single day. And think about the weight off your back you're going to have once you accept, just accept that death happens, okay? Accept that and just start to look at your life change. It's going to change, okay? So I hope you got something out of this video. It was kind of everywhere, but it was just something that was on my mind, and I thought this would be a good video to do today. It was on my heart. So if you're suffering from any kind of fear like that, or a fear of death or fear of dying, you have health anxiety, depression issues, stress, anxiety, I'm putting a Facebook group down below in the description and on the pinned comment. Join that group. It's fresh. It's new. But I've already have 30 members in there, and there's a lot of discussions going on. I'm really excited about that. Subscribe if you haven't. Hit that notification button next to it. Like this video. And also leave me a comment down below of what your thoughts on death are. If you've had any near-death experiences, or if there's just anything you want to share, any tips on how to overcome your fear of death, just let me know down below. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and you have a good one. Hope you enjoyed the video.